me unmute my mic. That might help. I'll turn the music down just a touch. Everybody hear me okay? Hope so, at least.
Hear me okay? Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, welcome to the Saturday stream for Tactical Snacking with Decay. You will probably notice. Thanks, Scott. I'm glad to hear that. You'll notice that I'm not wearing an apron at the moment, and that's because I wanted to kind of give a state of the stream address. I feel like I should have like a podium or something like that, but I just kind of wanted to talk about some stuff. Hey, Mr. Kingsley, welcome, sir. Happy to have you here. So the big reason for the party today, if you probably, at least if you're familiar with chat, you will have noticed that you're now able to subscribe, and that is because earlier this week I got the email and submitted the information to become an official Twitch affiliate, which means that we have cool emotes, which means that we have people can subscribe to the channel now, and it's really exciting. It's been kind of a wild and crazy week ever since that happened. It literally, after the Monday stream, I crashed pretty hard, and then Tuesday morning I woke up to the email, and at that point it was like, this is happening, and things just started happening super quick throughout the week, including setting up things like the emotes. So if you actually go down right now, at least for the official Twitch chat, there's only the one emote, which is that little dumpster fire. The other ones are still pending approval for some reason, because I submitted all of those, I think, on Wednesday. But if you happen to have the BTTV plugin, there should be a whole slew of emotes that are available there, which are a lot of fun, I think. I took some time way too much time to set that up, but I had a great time doing it. And then, Wednesday, hanging out in Mr. Kingsley's stream there, which, darling, if you would be so kind as to give Mr. Kingsley a shout out. That was another thing I figured out, was how to fix those chat commands. Ta-da! So that's working. And anyways, so he's, doing his thing, recording some amazing music, and I'm enjoying it. And he just offhandedly says, "Hey, I should do an official jingle for you." He was the one that did the old, just kind of off the cuff, DK's baking a cake today, which was a blast, and I love it. And it's part of the reason why, if you probably can't see it because most people have one of those founder shields right now, but the subscriber emotes that pop up are all slices of cake. So forevermore, cake will be part of this, and you'll notice that the channel points, which I haven't had a chance to really set up any channel point redeems yet, but the channel points are nuts. So that's a lot of fun. But anyways, back to Wednesday. Andrew says, "Hey, I should do a jingle for you tomorrow." And I kind of learned a life lesson from Ghostbusters early on in my life. If someone asks if you're a god, you say yes. And in this case, if someone says, "Hey, I want to write you a jingle," and it just so happens that particular person is a Juno Award-winning guitarist and composer and is an all-around amazing person, well, you say yes. And so he did. He wrote me a brand new jingle, which we're going to premiere right now. And if you have not heard it yet, you're in for a treat. This is amazing. I cannot express how happy I am with this and how much joy it brings me. I might tear up a little bit. That's how happy I am about it. So, okay, I'm mute my mic, and let's see if I can make this work now. So yeah, I am super excited with it. Oh, and the wind just blew down my board.
Can I get it?
Nah, it's fine. Hope so. Had a board kind of covering the window, but thankfully I have a big TV here. Although it's probably going to drive the webcam nuts with the lighting. Yeah, honestly, Andrew, man, you seriously hit it out of the park. That was, I love it. I absolutely love it. So that is the theme song and jingle that is going to loop through the opener as well as the ending. And in the event I ever go on an intermission, it'll be in there too. I'm glad you had a good time making it. It was a lot of fun to watch work. Andrew does these recording streams, for those that don't know, where he's just working on his own music and kind of futzing around with stuff. And it's fun to watch that kind of creative process take place. I enjoy it. And so, yeah, like, it definitely brings me back to my younger years, the whole pop punk and ska era. And so, yeah, it makes me all kinds of happy. So, yeah, things are afoot. There's some, yeah, I honestly, I can't even begin to properly thank you. That's how amazing it is. Oh, a couple of other things that took place. What you can kind of see down in the corner here is I put in a table and jacked it up, and it's on casters, so I have a kind of a prep area here for staging stuff, and so it's going to make life way easier for doing this kind of thing long term. So that's kind of exciting. And set up some chat commands. So, like, for instance, when somebody pops into the stream for the first time, let me mouse over to this. Where's the cursor?
Let's say, we have a couple. Wolfie Metal Beast is new.
Let's see. Did it kick out the message? I can't tell. No, it didn't.
No.
Did I even type in the right command? I made a list.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there's that one. That's yeah, because that's a running joke, obviously, and we'll kind of get to that. But yeah, so it's a party, and first things first, we need a party libation. I'm going with the Martinelli's Sparkling Blush. It's a raspberry with the cider. Kind of came out, I think it was this last Christmas, I think it was, or before that. Oh, so close. Okay, cool.
Oven's ready.
Oh, good. The oven's ready. So I'm going to be enjoying it in my brand new Sleeper Ship mug, which came in the mail. Thank you, thank you. Got to give something to Mrs. Wayso. There you go, dear.
Oh, the well done used been found.
Oh, well done, you's been found? Nice. So, we're going to keep these around. Okay.
I just claimed a bonus.
What happened?
I just earned 60 nuts.
Did you now? All right. So, we should make some food now. On the menu today, as I have written up on here, oh yeah, this was another thing that happened. So, the cabinet whiteboard stuff, almost, I think, a day or so after we put it up, it just started bubbling like crazy. And it was driving me nuts. So I decided that I was going to take down the cabinets, take off that contact paper stuff that was just bubbling like crazy. And I thought if I kind of refinished them and sanded them down and put them back on, it would work a lot better. But unfortunately, I didn't decide to do all that until yesterday. So one side has the stuff on, the other side is just bare paint at the moment. So that's why the menu is only on one side today. But we are going to be making some stuffed mushrooms. We're going to bake some jalapeno poppers. We are going to make an onion and garlic dip. We're going to make fromage fort, which is a fortified cheese dip that then goes on a baguette and then stuck under the broiler. And we're going to do a roasted beet Belgian endive salad. And it'll make sense once we actually get to it, because Belgian endive is like these little tiny thingies, and when you take off the individual leaves, it acts like an scoop. Because the whole idea behind all these foods that I chose for today is that they should be something that you can pick up and eat in a single bite, or in the case of the dip, again, single bite using like a chip or something like that. But that is kind of the general idea. I got all my notes laid out, so I have all this stuff here, which is great. Before I get to kind of prepping and working on some of this stuff, the first thing that I want to do is, because one of the components of that beaten Belgian endive salad is toasted nuts. And you're probably asking yourself, well, what kind of nuts are we going to be toasting? Why, these nuts, of course. These are walnuts, and all I'm going to do for this is...
Nick Miller's here.
Oh! Nick Miller! Welcome, welcome, Shruddy boy, Jousty boy, rhythm guitarist in a phenomenal tech death band called First Pregnant, and oh yeah, he just happens to play bass in Unleash the Archers. If I believe, oh good. Thank you for being on top of it, Lumpy Pickle. So yeah, we're just gonna toast these nuts, and that should be good for our purposes right now. All I'm going to do with these is I'm going to hit them with a little bit of grapeseed oil. Not very much, because they don't need to be drowning. I just want to get a little bit of a coating on there. And then hopefully my head's not in the shot. Oh, good. The welcome. Oh, it was welcome. I thought it was Olaf. Man, I'm so glad I sent this list to somebody. And then I'm just going to hit it with a little bit of salt and pepper. This is just kosher salt that I'm sprinkling on. Okay. I'm keeping those off to the side because I'm going to need them. And then these are just going into a 350 Fahrenheit oven for about... I'll check them after 10 minutes, and then maybe let them go as long as 15. And yeah, so that is step one. Go back to that. Okay, 10-minute timer is going. Awesome. Next up, so in these dishes, there's a few things that we need multiples of. Garlic, chopped parsley, and cut up green onions, and then also some shredded cheese for the fromage fort. Which I'm not going to worry about shredding just yet, because I have some leftover cheese from last night that I'm going to use for the jalapeno poppers. So that should be just fine for that, and we can deal with that later. So the first thing I'm going to do is let's chop up some parsley.
G-Money's here too.
Oh, welcome, welcome. G-Money in the house. Thank you so much for popping by today for the party. This is just a bowl of picked parsley leaves from about a bunch of parsley. And let's see, I want that knife. So because I'm using it in two different things, it's going to be going into the onion and garlic dip as well as the stuffed mushrooms. So I'm going to cut all this up, get it back into the bowl, and then we'll have that for use. How's everybody's day going so far? Usually when I start off with a big pile of herb like that, I like to kind of give it a rough chop initially in order to get it beat down, and then I can come back and run my knife through it a lot more. Usually when it comes to chopping up parsley, the stems tend to be on the woodier side, but some of the more tender ones I don't worry too much about just because they're a lot more tender. But I want, kind of a finer consistency to this. I don't necessarily want gargantuan, let's see, okay. I don't necessarily want gargantuan pieces of parsley, so I'm just wanting to break this down a little bit more. Just a force of habit, I always tuck my thumb underneath when I'm doing that kind of movement, just so then that way I don't accidentally decide that my knife wants to take a bite out of me. And I have cut myself a few times. That's just sort of inevitable when you play with knives all the time, is that it's going to happen. But I can't necessarily stop. I mean, you stop for a moment in order to, stop the bleeding, put a band-aid on it or whatever, and then you just kind of go back to work. I apologize if I don't see a question or a comment or something like that, just because, well, I'm playing with the knife and I like to kind of look at this. Yeah, no, didn't cut it off just yet, although I got a cool scar story. I don't know if that little scar there is visible. Initially it was a perfect little circle, and I got it from a deli slicer from when I used to work at Whole Foods. What happened was this one night, customer wanted some prosciutto sliced, and it was basically at the end of the leg, and I was kind of pressing down on it in order to get it to slice, because that's just how it was, and my thumb came back and slid against the guard and whoop, sliced off a little circle. Left a cool little scar, but it's one of those things that had I gone to like bosses or anything like that and be like, oh hey, so this happened, it would have been one of those things where it's like, okay, great, now they're gonna make me go through some safety training program, kind of all that corporate mandated stuff that they have to, just because they have to. I didn't say anything. I just, slapped a Band-Aid on it and went back to work. And then had a cool scar to, show off later. And that's not even like the worst injury that I've ever had in a kitchen. The worst I ever had was when it was in culinary school, and what had happened was I was taking my classical European. Anyways, there's our parsley. Classical European cuisine midterm practical exam, and for it, and I don't even remember what all I was making. What I do remember is that I went to sear off a piece of pork, and I had preheated a pan and I had some oil in it, and what ended up happening was I didn't realize that there was some moisture on that pork. And moisture, water and oil don't mix. Water and hot oil really don't mix. And oh, by the way, that board scraper, you can pick them up at Dollar Tree for literally $1. Yeah, so hot oil and water goes splash, and went splash all over my hand, and hurt like the dickens. Thankfully, we kept an ice bucket in there. It was sort of mandatory when you're playing with high heat and things like that. So I went and plunged my hand in the ice bucket, just told my instructor, burnt myself, but, I'm going to go back to work. By the end of the practical, my entire top of the hand here had blistered up probably about that much. So I had a gargantuan blister on top by the time it ended. And yeah, still pulled off the highest grade in the class. So, yay me. Anyways, back to enough of the war stories, at least for the time being. We got more prep to do. Next up, so we did the parsley. Let's do the green onions next. So we need green onions for multiple things. And so I have gone ahead and kind of prepped a lot of this stuff in order to make sure that, we're not standing here watching me wash stuff at the sink, because that's super boring.
Your mom commented about no party music.
Well, Digital Millennium Copyright Act and all. Because it would be my luck that the moment I put on one regular song or something like that, that some publishing company would pop up and be like, you can't do that. That would be my luck. So all I'm doing is just...
A little sad you missed the jingle.
Oh, you missed the jingle? Hold on.
Hello, boys and ghouls. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK.
Okay, timer's going off. give them another couple of minutes. Oh, I should probably show these off. Let me do that. So these are just handles for picking up like the edge of things, and especially for really small trays like that, this is perfect. So that way I don't have to get out an oven mitt or something like that. Very, very useful. Thank you, Korea. Yeah, these things are awesome. Okay, so we got some of the green onions chopped up. I've got other green onion bits here, which I will go ahead and chop up so I can use them. And to be honest, we eat enough green onions around here that I kind of feel like if I don't end up using all of these right now, I can just hang on to them and, I don't know, toss them in a salad later or something. There we go. Yeah, one of these days I'll figure out how to enable the moderators to be able to switch cameras as needs be. That'll be fun. That's one of the things you learn doing this, is just how much goes into the back end, and it definitely makes me appreciate some of the really big streamers out there that have super complicated setups, and they're doing all sorts of crazy things during their streams, and you're like, how much stuff did they have to set up in order to make that happen? Now, granted, some of them have, you know, teams of people working for them, but it's pretty impressive. Is Grant trolling? I'd be a little disappointed if he wasn't.
He's asking if you're tossing the salad.
Am I tossing the salad? Yes, I will in fact be tossing the salad later. You know, no judgment, all God's children. Alright, those are good. So since Grant missed it, we decided to toast up some of Dee's nuts. These are going to go into the salad later. So I'm going to actually set these off to the side to cool. Finish working on these. That's the one problem with having all these little nubbies, is then it's like, oh great, now what do I do? And just, for our purposes at least, we can just kind of hack at them and it's all good. I mean, if this were a fine dining establishment, that'd be one thing. They'd be like, no, you can't do that. They would just end up, probably not throwing them away, but they would end up using them in something else that didn't require perfect little circles. This is actually a topic that I was thinking about this week, was kind of just recipes and the food that one chooses to use in said recipes, the quality of said food, and it's, you know, it's just one of those things that I think about. And really, most of the time I would say that a recipe is a bit like a chain, in that every link in the chain matters, and a recipe is only as strong as its weakest link. However, that is not, it's not 100% accurate. And the reason why I say that is because there's definitely point of diminishing returns when it comes to things. Especially like if you're using things like wine or beer in cooking. I wouldn't necessarily use a bottle of Opus 1, which is a really high-end Cabernet Sauvignon out of Napa Valley. Usually runs, $200 a bottle kind of thing. That's one of those things that I wouldn't use for that. However, I wouldn't necessarily use the like bottom shelf kind of stuff. There's trade-offs when it comes to that sort of thing, and I feel like, especially for that sort of thing, that, and in the case of like wine and beer especially, if it's not something that you wouldn't enjoy drinking, I wouldn't use it. And then that way, if it's something that you do enjoy, whatever little bit you use in your recipe and then whatever's left over, you can enjoy it, you know, in true Julia Child fashion. There's trade-offs for everything, and something to consider. I mean, this is the sort of thing that I think about all the time when it comes to food. It's like, okay, well, what am I doing? What am I making? And when, you know, what, how good does the individual ingredients need to be for what I'm doing? And who's the target audience? You know, if I'm going to, you know, if I'm just going to some, you know, backyard barbecue and I'm okay with the people and I'm not like, oh my gosh, these are my best friends. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'll skimp on, you know, quality a little bit just because, you know, whatever. But I mean, if it's people that I like, okay, we're going to, you know, step it up. We're going to buy some quality ingredients and we're going to, you know, bring it up. Anyways, this, like I said, this is stuff that I think about. Okay. Garlic. Oh, something just happened.
Alex.
Hey! G-Tribe Alex, thank you so much for subscribing, buddy. Laheim. That should be sufficient for our needs today. Beauty. Boop. I'm never going to live down the horseradish, am I, Grant? The horseradish that Grant is referring to is when his band rolled through Portland and I fed them. One of the things I made was a horseradish sauce with what I thought was initially a relatively fresh horseradish root. However, the weakness of said horseradish after the fact kind of told me otherwise, that it was on the older side. Because had that actually been as fresh as I was initially led to believe that it was, the moment he opened that jar, it should have gassed him. Just because I timed it. When it comes to, for instance, should you ever make horseradish yourself, anybody, it comes in a root form, not a little bottle, amazingly, but there's a chemical reaction that takes place that gives horseradish that heat, and that peaks at, I think it's like, I'd have to look it up. I don't remember the exact time. However, that is when, if you add the vinegar, what it does is it halts that process. So if you time it right, depending on when you add that vinegar, is going to determine just how much of a kick, how much, like if it's going to turn into a chemical weapon sort of thing. I was aiming for, you know, banned by the Geneva Convention, but unfortunately, it being as weak as it was, yeah, it was just like you could eat spoonfuls of it without even worrying about it. But next time, I'm just saying. All right. So garlic is being used a few times today, if I remember correctly. Just about everything. The fromage fort, the baked jalapeno poppers, the stuffed mushrooms. What else? Oh yeah, the dip. We're going to put a little bit in the dip. And I'll talk more about all of that once we actually get to them. Okay. And that will suffice for what we need right now. Okay. Move that off to the side. Fine there. Okay. Wash my hands real quick. Okay. So the first thing we're going to make is these stuffed mushrooms. Now that we've gotten kind of all the common ingredients out of the way, which if you're just a party planning tip, if you're making multiple dishes for anything, it's really helpful to have kind of all the recipes laid out in front of you and go through and kind of figure out what are all the common ingredients are. And then that way, like I just did, you can chop all of the one thing at that one time instead of like doing it for what you're making, then moving on to the next thing. It just kind of helps save time and effort. It's one of those things that it feels like it should be common sense, but it sometimes it's just not. And that's nobody's fault. It's just you don't think about it. So, okay, stuffed mushrooms. When it comes to stuffed mushrooms, there's a few things that we need to consider. In this particular circumstance, we need to consider the mushroom. And there's these. Did I pull it out? Yes, I did. Okay, cool. So, because watching me prep all of these mushrooms is super boring, I have a stunt mushroom and then a whole bunch of mushrooms that I already prepped. In this case, I'm using cremini mushrooms. Let me switch that to that so you can see. I'm using a cremini mushroom because they're readily available and they usually have a pretty firm texture to them. And when it comes to, like, if you're doing any kind of stuffing, these work fantastic for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be this. Button mushrooms will work just as well. But it's just something to consider. Because also, you know, how much you're paying for said mushrooms is also a big factor. So some of these aren't quite as pretty as the others, but that's okay. Oh, and it looks like we had a little bit of breakage. And I didn't... You know what? That's okay, because I can use broken mushrooms in, like, eggs tomorrow or something. Okay. So what do we got here? 12, about 16. In terms of prepping them, what I do is, if you can notice, see that little kind of black ring? The stem, I'm only going to take off a little bit of it because the very ends of it tend to be on the woody side. And I don't want that in the final mushroom, because what we're going to actually do, so we're going to make a stuffing with, it's going to have a little bit of cream cheese, there's going to be some Italian sausage, we're going to saute up these mushroom stems, and also in the event that you have, like, if you can see inside this little kind of membrane thingy, we're going to take that out, and then that's also going to get chopped up and sauteed. And these are pretty solid, but it's just a question of, okay, chop it up nice and small, and then that way you still get all that mushroom goodness, and it's not going to waste. That's something else to consider too, is because you're buying these usually by weight, and so every time you throw something away, you're literally throwing money away. I've got the rest of the stems here from having already chopped those up. So now we've got some additional. Okay. So let's see. All right. Garlic is done. That's done. Is there anything else that we need to prep? Not really. So that being the case, let's move this off to the side. Bust out the burner here. So you may notice that this isn't super clean. It's because I this morning I got up early and caramelized onions for the dip in it, and there's some onion bits left over, which quite frankly I am just fine with going into the stuffed mushrooms. No sense in washing something out if it's fine for using for the next sort of deal. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some, I have some mild Italian sausage, which I should just get. I'm going to need that, and a little bit of that. That closed. It's just some mild Italian sausage, and you can use spicy if you hot Italian sausage. I tend to like using if I have an option between a spicy and a mild version that's going into something, I tend to prefer the mild and not spicy version. Then that way I can add my own heat, because everybody perceives heat differently. And for some people that are full on chili heads, they can be like, oh, this is totally nothing. But I mean, your mouth will be on fire for something that they don't think is that big of a deal. So that's just my thought process, because you can always add heat, you can't take it away. It's kind of like salt. You can always add salt, but you can't take it away. So if you have that sort of mentality, then when you go to make stuff, then it's like, oh, okay, I should, hold back a little bit, taste things as you go, and be like, oh, okay, this is better. So that's what I would do. So let me get this fired up, because nice. So that is going. time to take the paring knife to the knife sharpener. Then all we're going to do is brown this up with the ends of the mushrooms. And then we're going to add a little salt and pepper and cherry vinegar. All the recipes that I'm using, I'm actually going to end up posting on the Discord later. Which, darling, if you would throw up the socials, that would be awesome. Or if Lumpy Pickle wants to throw up the socials, that would be awesome too. Oh. Yep, there we go.
I did it! Woo!
I did a thing. Alright, this is not going to work for these purposes. That's all of that. So yeah, I'm going to post the recipes on the Discord and probably the Facebook page later. So then that way, if you're like, hey, that looked really good, and you're curious about amounts and things like that, so Italian sausage, generally speaking, tends to have a pretty coarse grind to it. So big pieces of meat, and you get like that big little bits of fat in there too. But for the stuffing, I want something a little bit more fine. So what we're gonna do is, after this has been made and it's had a chance to kind of cool down a little bit, we're actually gonna throw it into a little mini prep that I have and kind of chop it up a little bit, just so then that way it kind of a better mouthfeel, that we're not having like big lumps of anything. No offense, Lumpy Pickle. In this particular circumstance, I want a smoother, finer texture to everything. And then this is going to get folded into a mix that's going to have some breadcrumbs. It's going to have a little bit of cream cheese. There's going to be an egg yolk that's going to act as a binder. And then, whatchamacallit, some parsley. We're going to add some Parmesan cheese. And then we will stuff these mushrooms. And then they'll end up baking at 300 Fahrenheit for 20-ish or so minutes. But we're going to hold off on baking them until we get probably the jalapenos all prepped and ready to go.
Oh, you got a bot? You got a bot, baby?
I got a bot?
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to ban the bot. Lumpy's on it, right? Thank you, Lumpy. There really should be like a mod training camp or something like that. There probably is. I'm thinking this canister is about dead. So, there we go. I knew it was getting towards the end. Okay. So let us throw in. Okay. You know what? I do not know their exact timing, but it's just one of those things that once it, you notice when it starts to run out, just from the output drops significantly. And okay, so one of the things that we're throwing in here is sherry vinegar from Spain. If you don't have sherry vinegar, balsamic vinegar will work just fine. But we're not adding a whole heck of a lot. We're only throwing in about, apparently nothing at the moment. That's awesome. I guess it's a good thing I keep a wine opener right here. Yeah. Yep. Okay, well that cork is dead. Literally just crumbled. Had that bottle for a little while. But I'm only going to add about half a teaspoon or so because sherry vinegar is super strong. I don't want it to totally overpower everything else. Because, sherry vinegar, usually around 8 or so % acidity. And, yeah, it can be really overwhelming. Alright, we'll hit it with a little salt. Pepper. And I'm not going to worry too terribly much about this, these big kind of chunks, because like I said, we're going to throw it into a mini prep, which is like a miniature food processor, but this one's powered by my immersion blender. That, and I'm also not super concerned about 100% cooking this pork all the way through. USDA guidelines say the sausage needs to be cooked to at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit for your food safety. Failure to do so could result in foodborne illness. So now that disclaimer's out of the way, reason why I'm not super worried about fully cooking it is because they're going to be stuffed into mushrooms and then go into a hot oven where they're going to come up to a final temp. So this is just a way of trying to ensure that it's not super overdone. Okay. That's looking pretty good, so I'll turn that off. And scoot that over so then it can cool down. And now we can move on to the rest of the mixture. Mixing bowl. Egg yolk. 2. Parsley. I'm using panko breadcrumbs because it's what I got and it's what I like to use and it will work wonderfully. If you have like just regular old breadcrumbs, feel free to use those. They will work wonderfully too. But like I keep panko on hand just because I like it way better. So that's what we're going to use for this.
Grant asked, have you thought about changing your Twitch name to Tactical Snake?
You know, I had thought about that, Grant. Yeah, I've thought about it, but yeah, I don't know. I'll have to weigh it out. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's a lot that kind of goes into that. A little bit of cream cheese. In this case, I'm using a whipped cream cheese since it's way more spreadable. And I'm only using a little bit, baby, so then that way you have plenty for your bagel tomorrow.
You can use as much as you need to.
I don't need to use a lot. So let's see. Yep, that you can. Oh, and yes, I'm using cup shredded Parmesan cheese. Again, thinking about the quality of ingredients and what you're making, this is one of those situations where something like this is going to work beautifully in this particular recipe. You don't necessarily have to go get yourself a big old wedge at $20 a pound, which is about $45.50 a kilo, I would imagine, in Canadian speak. But for our purposes, this is perfect. So I'm only going to add a couple of ounces of this, about 4 or so, and I'm just eyeballing it. That will work. And then a bit of parsley. And I got a sink of hot soapy water, so I can just toss the spoon in there. And then breadcrumbs. Oh yeah, breadcrumbs doesn't take very much. This is maybe 1/4 cup or so. What we're doing with like the egg and the cream cheese and everything could be considered kind of like a panade. Which is a kind of a bread and milk mixture that gets used a lot when you make meatballs. Also like meatloaf. It acts as like a binder, but also helps retain moisture. So then that way you get a really good mouthfeel and texture for whatever it is that you're making. And then last but not least, an egg yolk. And if I made protein shakes or something like that, I would probably keep the white for that, but I don't. So I'm just going to put it off to the side for right now. I got raw egg in my hand, so I just wanted to wash those real quick. Okay. So this we're just going to mix up, smush it all together. Okay, that's looking good. Let's get out this dealie. This is the little mini prep thingy that I was talking about. I think I'm only going to fill it halfway just to be safe. This just plugs into the top. There we go. Alright, have it on 1 from the last time we used it. A little bit more. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Nice thing about these stuffed mushrooms is you can actually make these and freeze them. So you can just kind of have them on hand and bust them out and thaw them and then bake them at whatever party you're going to. I want to say that you can freeze them for upwards of 3 months. I would just wrap them up in plastic wrap first, and then with foil. But yeah, you can easily, like, you can make these a few days in advance. Everything you can make basically in advance. The only thing that we're making today that it comes down to sort of a final assembly is going to be that salad. But like the beets for it, I roasted yesterday, just because I had the time yesterday, and it just works out better. So that way you're not having to stress about, you know, getting food ready for the party. There we go. Okay, that's looking good. Okay. If y'all ever have any questions on here, Mrs. Hueso is here to definitely answer. And if she can't, she can shout them out to me. Since she's just sitting in our dining room, which is back behind me, and she's currently off camera.
Grant's talking about egg whites, and she's talking about egg whites.
Oh, for protein.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the last I will need of this today. All right. Smells excellent. I am looking forward to shoving a few of these in my mouth hole later. Okay, that is looking good and mixed. All right, I'm going to hang on to that because I'm going to want to use it later. Now to the exciting portion of the stream where we stuff mushrooms. Probably that's off camera, but it's, you know, get a spoonful, stuff it in there, mound it up a little bit, like that. Hopefully not too much of that was off camera. Couldn't tell I was stuffing a mushroom.
No, you can see it good.
Usually when it comes to buying the mushrooms, and this was something I wanted to talk about a little bit earlier, is I try to go for ones that, for something like this, because my thought process is I want to be able to, I just realized I forgot to mix in the Parmesan. That's okay, I can put it on top. My thought is I want to be able to pick it up and pop it in my mouth and eat it in a single bite. Okay, so the two things that I'm looking for when I'm buying mushrooms is, number one, is it something that I can comfortably put in my mouth and eat in one go, that I'm not necessarily having to take multiple bites of. The other thing that I try to find for something like this is, because I'm pulling out those stems and chopping them up, and because I'm stuffing them, I want to get one that has a relatively large stem in it, so then that way there's more area in the mushroom to stuff with this yummy goodness. Make sense? And there's certainly, you know, any number of ways to make this vegetarian friendly.
Grant says clove mud.
clear as mud? Good. That's what I like to hear.
Is there a reason why you're not piping it?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, don't have a disposable piping bag. And I was actually going to pipe the...
We have piping bags.
Do we?
Yeah. With my cake cones.
Where?
Over here in the cake drawer.
You've got disposable piping bags and you've been holding out on me?
Yep. Yarr.
Disposable piping bags, kids, are amazing, and I am definitely going to be using one for the poppers because it's just so much easier to do that. But for something like this, doing it with the spoon, it's not terribly difficult. As you can see, I mean, it's not really taking all that long.
Here you go. Because your wife loves you.
Hi, Mrs. Waysa. I did not realize you had disposable piping bags.
Cake class.
That is awesome. That is a very happy surprise, let me tell you. Because if you don't have disposable piping bags, the old trick is to use a gallon Ziploc bag and snip the corners off of. I will say, however, do not use the regular fridge bags or like the sandwich bags or something like that. You got to get the heavy freezer bags. Because if you use the ones that are made with the thinner plastic, that first time you go to pipe it, the bag is just going to burst and you're going to have stuff everywhere and you're not going to have a good day. So I do not recommend using those fridge bags. Definitely use a freezer bag for that. I'm very clearly going to have some leftover stuffing, but that is all right because I can stuff it into other stuff later. Namely me. Okay, so that is all of that. Then put that away. This is why I have knives. So I'm going to top it with just a little bit of this Parmesan. That's all right if it goes places. And we're going to hold off on baking these, but they're going to be at the ready. I don't know if Nick is still around, but I imagine this is the kind of thing that he does at his job because he works as an expo at a restaurant. An expo person, their kind of whole job really is kind of final assembly slash finishing off the plates before they go out to the floor. They're, other than the waiter, they're usually the last person to touch the dish. It's a very important job. It may seem, to those that aren't super familiar with fine dining of any type, like, well, what would that sort of thing? What, they don't necessarily understand it. But when you're, working on the line, you've got, 150 seats, and it's a busy night. You can't necessarily leave that sort of thing to have the chefs or whomever's working the line deal with that, and so you have like the expo folk do it, and it's an important job. So okay, these are good to go. And then after they come out of the oven, there we go. After they come out of the oven, when we go to plate up, we'll hit them with just a little bit of parsley at the very end. So I'm going to go put this on the stove. All right. Dish number 2, poppers. Let's grab the stuff for this. Got 2. Oh. I think that's it. Okay. Talk about that in a minute. So, jalapenos. People, sometimes have a love-hate relationship with them. In this particular case today, I don't know what it's like for the rest of you folk, but up here at least, it can sometimes be difficult finding jalapenos with any kind of heat. I know when we first moved up here, I remember I bought a jalapeno for something, and I was so used to going to a Mexican market and buying, really nice quality ones, taking a bite out of it, and it was no more warmth than like a bell pepper, and so it was really kind of disappointing. But yeah, so these may be hot, these may not be, who knows, but I'll show you kind of what I'm gonna do with this. I'm gonna go grab a spoon real quick, and also my gloves, because quite frankly, capsaicin is really sticky, chemically speaking. Capsaicin is the molecule that gives you that burning sensation when you eat spicy foods. And I always keep these inside out after I wash them, so then that way they're clean when I go to put them back on. And that way, because capsaicin is as sticky as it is, and really it's mostly alcohol soluble, so people will be like, oh, if I eat spicy food and I have a beer with it, it'll be fine. No, I'm talking it needs to be like super high proof, like Everclear sort of thing, a super high proof, and that will kind of dislodge that capsaicin from whatever. If you get it on your hands rubbing alcohol, usually, like, if you can get the higher percentage stuff, like the 90%, that would be what I would use in order to get it off your hands, because the last thing you want to do is rub your eyes, pick your nose, put your hands in other places that are a little bit more sensitive. I do not recommend that. Not that I've not personally been there before. It's not a good time, folks. Yeah, 100% ethanol, basically. So in order to prep this, before we even get to the actual everything else, is these are going to be sitting kind of on the baking tray on the platter. So I want to figure out, okay, where is it most comfortable sitting, and then okay, I also leave the stem on, so then that way when you go to eat them, you got something to hold on to. So it's comfortable there. I'm going to turn it up on its side, and then I'm going to take off about the top third. What I'm looking for is kind of the edge where the stem is, and then I'm going to follow it kind of all the way down. Chop that off. If you notice, I'm using a different cutting board. That's so then that way I can continue to use the green one without having to worry about jalapeno stuff getting everywhere. Capsaicin. So I'm just going to use the spoon to dig out the seeds and the ribs that are in here. What you could do, and this is something that I've seen, save all these seeds and say you're making a spicy soup or something like that, put the seeds into like one of those tea balls in the soup pot, so then that way you kind of get some of that additional heat without having to eat the seeds, because the seeds, our bodies just don't digest them. There's too much outer stuff going on with the seeds. The materials that they're, you know, that they're made from just doesn't, our body can't digest it. So then that way they just, yeah, they're there for basically heat purposes, obviously growing more jalapeno plants. But yeah, you can certainly save them, like I said, and put them in a tea ball and then into your soup. It's a common thing that I've seen actually a number of restaurants do in Korea, of all things. So I'm just scraping this off into my trash can here. Okay, so I got my little jalapeno boat here, and that's going to go on the tray. Now, I got this whole bit of jalapeno here, but I don't want to throw it away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mince it up, and then we're going to mix it into the filling for the poppers. And then all I'm doing is just cutting this into a thin strip, then turning it to the side, and then hitting it again. Minced jalapenos. And I've got a container here with the jalapenos from yesterday. Okay, so we're going to hang on to that. And since I've got these all prepped and ready to go, I'll go ahead and lay these out on the board.
Pickle's got a question.
Yes.
You could pop the extra peppers in a food processor?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to throw them into a food processor, go right ahead. This isn't necessarily, you know, something that you have to do. I did it just because it was quick. And then with the filling of these, you kind of have that visual, because this obviously isn't necessarily a single bite sort of thing. But then you also have the visual of the green bits mixed in with everything else in the filling, which I will talk about in a minute. And that will work for the time being. So I'm going to actually go rinse these off. Okay, so let's talk about the filling. So the filling for this is going to be predominantly cream cheese based with some cheese mixed in. We're going to fry up a couple of rashers of bacon. Rashers is the proper name for the strips. We're going to cut up and fry up a couple of rashers of bacon to mix into it. We're going to throw in a little bit of feta, which is, you know, going to be really delicious with this. And then a little onion powder, a little garlic powder, which onion and garlic powder, I don't use super ton. I prefer to use granulated, and all that. The only difference between the two is that granulated is a little bit larger granule, whereas powder is in a powder form. When I make like my butt glitter and things like that, I prefer the granular. Just because it mixes and stays as a good mix and doesn't separate out better. than using powders for everything except like pepper, because I usually end up buying whole peppercorns and then grinding them up, and so they tend to be a little bit bigger. That way things don't fall apart. So first order of business is I'm gonna give the little wok here just a quick wipe down, and then we will cut up and fry up those 4 strips of bacon, and I will probably do that just right there. In here I've got some leftover, which you can't see. Boop. In here I just have, this is some leftover shredded cheddar from last night. This will be fine for what we're doing. I'm not going to use all of this in the filling because we're going to want to top it with a little bit more of the cheese. So then that way it's got kind of a nice melty top. But we have this at the ready. So that is good to go there. Let me go grab, let's see, I'll keep the spoon for the time being because we're going to end up mixing up the filling, and I'll need to, actually I got the spatula for that. Okay, I'm going to go wipe these down and I'll be right back. It's fun when you can hear my internal monologue sometimes, huh? I'm going to do this, oh wait, this, and then, oh, shiny. Okay, that is good there. Okay, that is good to go, that is there. I'll just cut the bacon on there. For the bacon to use, you can leave the bacon out if you want, it doesn't matter. I think it's better with the bacon, but in terms of what bacon to use, I would recommend a good smoky bacon. Pepper bacon also works really well. I would try to avoid a sweet bacon like a maple bacon or something like that, just because the sweet with everything else is a little weird. There are times when sweet and heat works really nicely, but I don't, maple bacon with this sort of thing personally I'm not the biggest of fans of, but your mileage may vary. Maybe you love it, and if you do, cool. Yeah, so let's get some smoky bacon. I'm just leaving the fridge ajar for a moment so I can get this out. Okay, 4 slices, rashers. I'm going to use a different knife for this since I still have to chop up a few other things. You'll see instructions in a lot of recipes that'll be like, oh yeah, just fry up the bacon and then crumble it up. You're welcome to do that. I like to cut it up first and then fry it up. That's just personal preference. Everyone does it, things kind of their own way. This is just kind of how I like to do it because I like to have a little bit more consistency in what I'm doing, because if all you do is, you know, fry up the bacon, I mean, there's a lot of potential variation in how the final slices look when they're fried up. This way, I'm, you know, basically guaranteed, oh, okay, I've got a little bit of consistency going on here. Cool. Since I was touching raw bacon and I don't want to touch everything else, so I don't have raw bacon hands going everywhere. Alright, so I'm going to get this going over a lower flame. So in that way I got plenty of time to finish everything else with the filling. Keep an eye on that. All right. Need that. We need this. All right. The base of this particular stuffing is going to be cream cheese that you've hopefully left out for a little while in order to soften it up. This has been out for about 2 hours, so it's nice and soft. Oh, there we go. Is the microphone picking up the sizzle? Yeah, it hasn't really started. All right, so I'm gonna, I'll probably use about half of that. And then also going into it is going to be some of these green onions that we chopped up earlier. Good chunk of this cheddar, which now that I see it, I think I might need to grate a little bit more. Thankfully, I have it out. You gotta love these little IKEA shredders.
I don't know if they make them anymore.
Really? Alright. That should actually be good for when it comes time to do the topping. So, excellent. I'm not going to worry about washing off that grater because we're going to grate the cheese for the fromage fort. Okay. I'm just mixing this up. You can use basically almost anything that you want in this. I would recommend something along the lines of a cheddar. You can certainly use like a Jack or a Colby Jack. Something on the somewhat softer shreddable side. If you wanted to use like a sharp cheddar, you're certainly welcome to. I find with the sharp cheeses for something like this, depending on how much you're eating, sharp cheeses can become really fatiguing for your taste buds. It's like you're eating so much really strong stuff that whatever you eat after that is just your taste buds are blown out, if that makes sense. All right. All right, let's see, what else do we need to put in? Well, there's cilantro, which is a hotly debated topic on the UTA Discord. We need to put in a little salt, a little feta. All right, so a little bit of feta, a little more feta, a little salt. little pepper. Then so this is just a touch of onion powder. I'm probably putting in about a half a teaspoon. I like these little baggies. I get them from the bulk section. So in that way I'm, you know, buy what I need sort of thing, and then that way I'm not sitting on a whole bunch of seasonings for a long term. And then about the same amount of the garlic powder. Okay. This is looking really nice. Does anybody not know how to fold something, by the way? Now that I think about it, and we were joking about the Schitt's Creek episode. Fold in the cheese, David! Well, how do I do that? You fold it in. Alright. Let's chop up that cilantro. So I've got some cilantro that I've prepped. And if you notice, I've got the stems still on there. And that's because cilantro stems tend to be a lot more tender, and there's a lot of flavor in them, and we're going to be chopping this up relatively fine anyways, so it's okay. I usually chop up the cilantro stems and use them in whatever it is that I'm making that has cilantro anyways, because again, this is one of those things that if you're throwing it away, you're literally throwing away money. Oh yeah? Thanks, Lumpy. Who'd he gift it to? Oh, right on. Welcome, welcome, McFaceStab. Hopefully my head's not in the way. All right. All right. These are looking just about done. So I'll turn that off. Get a slotted spoon. Drain off that excess fat. If you're not saving your bacon fat, what are you doing? Saute your veggies in it, make your morning eggs in it. I'm not talking about like drowning whatever it is you're making in the bacon fat. I'm talking about just using like a tiny bit, just enough to kind of lube up that pan. Okay. Final mix on this. I made the conscious decision to grab a bigger bowl than I thought I would need initially for this very reason, So in that way I had plenty of room in order to mix everything up.
Is this what folding is?
So technically speaking, a fold is cutting it, going underneath, and then literally folding it back on itself, turning the bowl, cutting, folding it on itself, cutting, folding it on itself. That is the definition of what folding is. You use it a lot more in baking than anything else, and you use the technique mostly if you're like adding something to like a meringue or a whipped cream, something that you've had to mix up in order to get a lot of volume. And you do that so as not to deflate whatever it is that you're making, and to gently kind of mix whatever it is in. Okay. And that is our popper stuffing. That is looking excellent. Ta-da! So, let's put them gloves back on. Sounded like a trumpet player there for a second. So this mixture at the moment is pretty stiff. I was thinking that I'd be able to just pipe it in. Well, we can give it a shot and see what happens. I get the feeling it might be a little too difficult to work, but yeah. Got them. I kind of feel like maybe I should use it. So this is a disposable piping bag. It's just in this case, it's a little plastic cone that we will load up our stuffing mixture into. And we'll get to see just how ill-advised this is. Or not. I will admit that this piping bag, I'm not sure if I'm even on camera, and probably hidden. Hang on. Aha! It's like I'm learning. The disposable piping bags that I've used in the past were probably meant for commercial bakeries and were quite a bit larger.
This is a 12-inch.
Okay.
I should have bought 18.
That's okay. Oh, okay. I don't know if y'all could hear that. Mrs. Weso said that when she bought them, she got the 12-inch ones, and that she kind of wished she had gotten the 18-inch. Well, it's doing pretty good so far. Only got a little bit more to load up. Okay. I'm going to get a paper towel and wipe off the glove real quick. Because I kind of need a grip. That was an Aerosmith album. Okay. Now, whenever we go to snip the tip of these things, we always go, Briss! Alright, well, let's let's try piping them in. So usually when it comes to piping these, oof, you squeeze from the back. I'm thinking I should have loaded this up less. Yeah, definitely should have loaded it up less. This is why we have that dumpster fire emote, kids. Alright, so we can always reload. Okay, let's do... Ta-da! Much better. Because the whole idea is that you're twisting the bag and that pressure is what's driving the insides out. Oh, head. I still... There we go. I got some honkin' jalapenos when they were on sale at the market that I went to. Because I guess there's a big football convention or something this weekend, and a lot of people cosplaying. I guess the tickets to the convention are super expensive. There we go. Alright, let's reload. All right. Nice. Let's see. These are going to get super melty when they bake, so I want to hopefully get them all facing up. There we go. These are looking pretty good. Okay, so we can put that away. Wanted to get the cream cheese off of there, so then that way they're way easier to clean a little bit later. Top these with a little additional cheddar at the moment. So these get all nice and melty and cheesy and yummy. Cheddar makes them better. Yeah, you know, I was using Windeer XYZ. I was using a spoon earlier for the mushrooms, but that's it. This is good to go. So, and now we're gonna pop the jalapeno poppers into the oven at 425 for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then the mushrooms are going to go in the 350 degree oven for about 20 minutes. We're going to have two separate timers going, but we're going to kind of have them at the ready, because once they come out we want to let them rest a little bit, so then that way you're not putting molten lava in your mouth, because that's never a good time. Okay. There's that one. And then that one. Awesome. Okay. Next, dip. Earlier, I posted on kind of the social media that I was caramelizing onions for the dip. These are the caramelized onions. They came out really nice. So I did 3 medium-sized onions with about 3 tablespoons of butter, and put about a head's worth of garlic sliced up in there too. So then that way we've got both some onion and both some garlic, but then we're going to fortify it with a few other things, mix it up, and it's going to be awesome. Okay. I need to cut up just a couple of things. So this is the only reason why I'm adding this is because I happen to have it. These are garlic chives. At Korean markets, you'll see them labeled as beichu. They get used in a whole bunch of different things. I like their flavor, and so I want to add it to the dip because I just think it'll make it that much better, because they're delicious. They make a great fresh kimchi. Yeah, they're got a little bit of garlic, but then you got some kind of crunchy texture because the leaves and everything are a little bit bigger. Got some bigger bits at the end here. Throw those in. Okay. Next up, a little bit of fresh garlic. Not very much, because fresh garlic as a flavor can really overpower the flavor, the sweetness of the caramelized onions. So I'm only adding a little bit just to kind of give a little bit of a pop. We're throwing in some green onions too. This not only for flavor, but I'm looking for kind of a textural contrast, because you're I'm also going to throw some parsley in there, by the way. With the dip, I don't necessarily want a completely smooth texture on it. I want a little bit of contrast. So that's why I have the caramelized onions. That's why I've got like the fresh garlic chives. That's why I got the green onions. So there's a little bit of a crunch. There's a little, some creaminess. There's some sweetness. There's a bite to it. Yeah, that's really kind of what I'm going for with this, and what I want for a really excellent onion dip. The other thing we need, more cream cheese. And sour cream. We're going to use a 8-ounce block of cream cheese in this, and then we're going to put in about 12 ounces of sour cream. You don't necessarily have to use straight sour cream. You could easily mix it up with plain yogurt if you wanted. That would work just fine too. But I happen to have sour cream, so I'm going to use sour cream. So this is actually a 24-ounce container, and I'm going to use about half of it. That looks about right. Okay. Okay, sour cream. We got the onions, the garlic. We're going to throw in. That's not it. No. It was on the door. Done got moved. Huh. That is so weird.
What are you looking for?
Worcestershire sauce. It was in a quart jar. Oh. It was hiding. So, years ago, relatively early on in my culinary school career, went to a restaurant that made their own Worcestershire sauce. And it was amazing. It was just mind-blowing. And so I, just kind of asked, hey, how do you make it? The chef went and back, grabbed the green cardstock that had scribbled out in pen the recipe, and handed it to me. And I immediately took pictures and started experimenting with it, and have since been making my own. This particular recipe is one that I've worked on for better part of 10 plus years ish, something like that. And it's the one recipe that I will very closely guard and won't share, just because it is something that I've poured so much time and effort into. Yeah, Mrs. Waso's right. She doesn't even know the way that the recipe works, and it's definitely changed over time. If you were to compare it to that original recipe, a lot of the same ingredients, but some of the stuff has definitely changed, as has the methodology. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, so that is really everything that we need for this dip. And it's just a question of mixing it up. And if you're, say you're taking this to a party, what I highly recommend doing is loading it up into a deli cup, and then that way, if you get to the party and you leave it there, it's just fine. It's, you could easily throw it away. You don't have to necessarily do dishes. Let me grab a deli cup so you know what I'm talking about. Deli cups are like these clear containers with the round tops that you usually get from, like if you go to a place and get like olives or something like that. Soup will come in these containers. They're just disposable deli cups. I love these things very much. Yeah, I would just load the dip up in one of these, take it to the party, and you're golden. And like I said, if you leave it there, no big deal. Let's do that. However, for today's purposes, we're not going to do that. And that is looking really good. Now, you've probably got a nice bit of caramelized onion on that. You've probably noticed that I haven't added any salt to this. There's a reason for that. Because the chips that I have that I'm gonna use to eat this tend to be on the saltier side, and I don't want to necessarily add salt to salt. So this way it doesn't have salt, so it's, you know, it's not super seasoned, but there's a lot of flavor to it. I will, however, add some pepper, which I didn't do earlier. And this is one of those things that it's better at least a day afterwards. If you can give it like 2-3 days, it'll just continue to get better, because then, you know, the ingredients have a chance to really relax, and the sour cream and the cream cheese can absorb the flavors of everything, and it'll just get better after a couple of days. So, for our purposes, that's the onion dip. All done. I'll bring everything back. Actually, got some extra in there. Okay, let's see where we're at on the timer. Ooh, that worked out really nicely, because these should be, where did I leave those? I left them over here. Those are looking pretty good. I will probably want to give them another 2 minutes. Okay. Next up, fromage fort. And thankfully, I don't have to cut anything up for this. He'll hydrate. I need this stuff.
When do the mushrooms go in?
Mushrooms are in. They still got about 10 minutes on the clock. Okay, so fromage fort, it's French, and it basically just means fortified cheese. It was, I don't remember how it necessarily came to be, other than it is super common for the French to have a cheese course or a cheese board at normal meals, and just kind of have it out. But the problem always popped up: what do you do with the little bits of cheese that are left over? You just have like just little chunks of cheese, different kinds that are left over. So what someone came up with, some genius, was let's make a fortified cheese spread. And what we're going to end up doing with it is spreading it on a baguette, cut up baguette, and then pop that underneath a broiler to brown up. Oh, that's the jalapenos. Those are looking pretty good. And then we'll hit these with just like a little bit of parsley at the very end, but I'm going to go let these hang out on the stove. And while I'm here, I'm just going to move the rack up to the top shelf. so we can put stuff under the broiler. This is just the walnuts that we toasted up at the very beginning. Put them in the bowl that we're going to use to make the salad, because we're going to want this tray. Okay, so as I was saying, little bits of cheese, literally whatever they had left over, and it would be a big mix of things. So like it was common to see things like bries and blues and hard cheeses and some softer cheeses and goat cheeses and whatever. And then it was just added in and then flavored with a little pepper, a little bit of garlic, and then usually you would add they would add just kind of whatever table white wine that they had, whatever they were drinking. So think like a Chablis, Sauvignon Blanc, any of the dry white wines really is what would be added to it. For our purposes, I don't feel like cracking a full bottle of white wine. However, what I do have is a little split of this Brut Cava. Cava is actually a Spanish sparkling white wine. And since it's a celebration and it's sparkling, it just kind of makes sense. Fromage Fort really is best once you've let it age for at least a couple of days, usually even longer. I've seen people who prefer it like a couple of weeks old, where it's had a chance to really kind of ripen up. And we're not using very much. We're only going to use about a quarter cup of this. So it's not going to be enough to be of any concern, especially since we're popping it under the broiler. You could use like a dry sake. That would probably work pretty decently. Nothing, like I said, very expensive, but something on the drier side. You don't really want any kind of sweetness or anything like that. But what I'm going to do is I've got a little bit of a blue cheese here. It's a Gorgonzola Dolce. One of my very favorite used milk cheeses. It is a soft rinded, think kind of like a brie, but it's made with used milk, and it's from the Basque region. It's absolutely delicious. This is a Comté. Gruyere is from Switzerland. Comté is French, but it is kind of in the same style. I tend to prefer the Comté over Gruyere personally, just from having cut cheese and eaten a whole bunch of cheese when I worked at Whole Foods. This is an aged Gouda that's got the cool crystals in it. Those are lysine, if I remember correctly, but they're little crunchy crystals that develop when cheese has had a chance to age for a really long time. And this is a cloth-bound cheddar. This is Beecher's Flagship Reserve, which is out of Seattle. They take their flagship cheddar, and instead of processing it like they normally would, they make it into rounds and cloth bound it, and then age it that way. And what the cloth bound aging does versus kind of their standard cheddar that they make is it tends to have a little bit more funk to it, and it's also a little bit drier. It's just a whole different beast. But it's super delicious, and I love all of these cheeses, and so this is going to be really good. And I spoke too soon when I said I didn't have to cut anything, because I need a board so I can kind of cut these a little bit. I just need a little board for this. So usually as a cheesemonger, blues is something you always do last, because in this case the penicillin gorgonzola that's in here, if it got onto the cheese wire that you were using, it would spread to everything else if you didn't clean it correctly. So then it could cause other cheeses to go bad. So I'm going to cut this last. And all I'm honestly doing is I'm going to be trimming off one of the rinds. I think that's the mushrooms.
How long do they need to sit before they can be eaten?
Not that long. I'm going to give these a few more minutes. Smell really good though. Since I'm here, I'm going to put the garlic in there now. And I'm also going to add pepper. I was first introduced to fromage fort when I worked at the cheese counter at Whole Foods. It was something that my immediate boss said, hey, this is something that we can make and sell, because sometimes you just end up with these weird nose pieces and it's still good cheese and you don't want to get rid of it. So this was a way to use the cheese. And there's only rind on one side of this, so that's good. But what I have in total is going to be about a ½ pound of this assorted cheese. And then, like I said, it's going to be about a ¼ cup of, in this case, we're using this cava. But if you have like just a nice white wine, you can certainly use that too. That would be definitely more traditional. And these are a little glossy just because I've had them out for a little bit to make sure that they would be nice and soft for processing, because the final texture of this is going to be a paste effectively. That's what we want. In this case, I'm just going to, you see this orange bloomy rind. I'm just going to kind of slice that back a little bit, because you certainly could eat the rind if you want to. In this particular circumstance, probably not. And there we go. I love this cheese so much. That's good stuff. So good. And then lastly, throw in a little bit of this blue. I was going to use this blue in something else. I'm not going to add all of it. I'm only going to add just a little bit. But it's Gorgonzola Dolce, so it's an Italian blue. And it's a little bit milder. It doesn't have a ton of bite. But I like using it to make a blue cheese dressing. And so that tends to be my go-to for that sort of thing. Alright, let's trim off that cloth end on this. And then let's shred. And the whole reason why I'm pre-shredding this is just so that the food processor has an easier time with it. And it'll also process that much quicker. That's good. And then we'll do the Comté. I'm really kind of surprised that the dogs haven't made their way into the kitchen with this cheese being out.
That's because they're out cold.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Nice. It's going to end up being a channel point redeem at some point once I figure out how to do that, is spend the channel points and then the dogs get a treat. And yes, I definitely did steal that from Colleen Delancey. He'll hydrate. Yeah, this Gouda is going to be a little bit more crumbly just because it is a harder cheese. But honestly, it's one of those. This is meant to be made with literally whatever you have on hand. So whatever you got, use. Okay, and that is the mushrooms. Oh, very good. Them's the mushrooms.
There's a delay.
Yeah, a little bit of a delay, but the Parmesan's got a little bit of brown on it. They're nice and steamy. The liquid that's in there, super common. We're not going to hang on to that, but we'll plate all this up at the very end. And then you'll get to eat. And I'll get to eat too.
And there will be food.
Then there will be food because I'm hungry. Okay. That is all of that. We're going to save that because the end. And then just got to crack this. Oh, nice. Didn't explode everywhere. So I like to err on the underside of adding the liquid initially, just so then that way I can always add more to adjust the consistency. I can't take any out. Okay.
ASMR time.
ASMR time. ASMR. Alright, we're going to add a little bit to it. Let's give that a check. That's looking pretty good. Process it for a little bit longer, but if you can see that consistency, that's kind of what we're looking for. A heat? Okay, that's looking good. Because that's where the food processor lives. All right, so we got our baguette here. This is definitely a baguette that's more in the traditional French style as opposed to the Vietnamese style. It's got a coarser grain. It's definitely a lot firmer. But for this particular purpose, it's absolutely perfect. So for this, I like to do slices that are about, what is that, maybe 3/8 of an inch. So then that way, I mean, it's effectively a crostini. but also, you know, it's not so much that you're having to take multiple bites in order to eat it. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. Since we've made about a dozen of everything else, we'll do an even dozen of this. Let's see, so 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect. And we've got some extra baguette for later. Alright, so it's literally spread it on there. That's it. Easy peasy. I'm using the back side of this just because it's a lot easier for me to spread using the back side of this. This is a spoon style spatula. I like the spoon ones more than kind of the bladed ones personally, just because I don't know, I find them more useful. More often than not, they're the ones I'm grabbing for.
Who are these made by?
Who's what made by? Oh, the spatulas?
The spoonchula.
Oh, the spoonchula. These are from, I think, ThermoWorks. If I remember correctly. They're the folks that make like thermopens, a lot of instant read thermometers. It's kind of their jam. If I remember correctly, they're based out of Utah. But I don't, not 100% on that. At least I thought that was the case. And this is literally what most kitchen work is just you're doing stuff, you're doing assembly, usually cracking jokes with the other people in back.
Yes, ThermoWorks.
Okay. Excellent. All right, so I've got these dozen. Whenever I go to pop stuff under the broiler, I tend to want to hang out and watch it, just because it's super easy for things to burn and have a fire, which we know from personal experience. I don't want to have a fire. I mean, it would be kind of exciting, but that's not really what I'm aiming for right now. Broiler, yes, eventually a broiler cam. That is the plan.
Now you gotta tell the fire story.
Oh, okay, we'll tell the fire story. Since I'm going over here, I'll tell this story. So, we lived in a townhouse for, what was that, like 6 years, 7 years,
Yeah.
something like that? We lived in this townhouse, and we had a broiler, and I was making garlic bread with a Vietnamese baguette one night, and just making dinner, and put it under the broiler. I was doing other things and forgot to set a timer. Suddenly, do you smell something burning? Oh no! Open it up, there's flames. And I immediately, because I keep a fire extinguisher by the stove, and there's one over there right now. I immediately went to grab it, and Mrs. Weso was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Those are really dirty and to clean up, and they're kind of expensive, you know, whatever. I'm like, okay, fine. So I open the door, and I just start going, I'm like, it's not really working, is it? And she's like, fine. So I cracked open the fire extinguisher, put it out, and I'd already turned off the broiler at that point, and there was baking soda everywhere because it was a dry one, and yeah, so that was our broiler story. And so now the rule is you don't set a timer for the broiler, you actually have to stay and watch it. So that's our household rule, and that's what we're doing. I tell you, these little handle dealies are super, super handy. Now I'm just moving stuff around, getting ready for the last thing.
You should show the expensive fire extinguisher.
Oh, the fire extinguisher? Before I do that. Oh, it's getting nice and melty. This is the fire extinguisher. It's just literally, you can pull this out with your thumb, push the button on top, and then spray it down. It's probably time for us to replace this one because I don't recall how long we've had it. But it fits perfectly right next to the stove. And in the event that there's a fire that you can't put out with either baking soda or putting a lid on it or whatever, we've got it.
Nightsome's asking about the green handle thing.
Oh, we are so close. I will tell you all about the Korean handle thingy in just a moment because this is almost perfect. Put it down here since that's where the actual lighting is. It's nice and brown, it smells amazing. And that's the fromage fort as a crostini. And I can turn off the oven now. So this dealie here, this is, think like a pair of spring-loaded pliers, but at a 90-degree angle. And it's used as a handle to pick up pans. I can pick up this bowl, but it's used because, like, if you go to, I don't know what the actual name of this is, but if you have a Korean market around, chances are they're going to have a little kitchenware section, and I guarantee you can find one of these there. Because if you go onto YouTube and fall down the rabbit hole of like Korean food videos, which is amazing, most restaurants that serve any type of jjigae or Korean stew, they're served in these like stone bowls that go right on the burner in the kitchen, and they use the tongs to pick them up, bring them out, and they're literally boiling on the table because that's how they love it. Super boily hot, like, you know, scald your mouth kind of thing.
You can get some aluminum ones for $6 on Amazon.
According to Mrs. Hueso, put the link in the chat, if you will. Mrs. Hueso found a pair of these for $6 on Amazon. She's going to drop the link into the chat. But Nip-Nop integrity tester. Probably not, because if you notice there's a hole in there, well, I suppose maybe you could. Anyways. Last thing. The beaten Belgian endive salad. And of course I lied about having to not chop anything anymore. Well, it's not really a lie because I didn't knowingly know the truth and then tell a falsehood. In this case, I just forgot. Okay. Let's go. Thankfully, there's not a heck of a lot to this, and it's pretty easy, and it is always delicious. So what I have here is roasted and diced up. I've got a chayoga beet. Oh, hang on. a Chioggia beet, and a golden beet, because I like roasted beets. And you can use like your standard red beet just fine. However, just as anybody who's ever eaten beets ever knows, the red that's in them gets everywhere, and whatever's in here gets stained. Whatever's inside of you gets stained. There was a whole Portlandia sketch about it. Oh, hey, little girl. Oh, here comes the puppy. Come here.
Uh-oh.
Come here. That's why I grabbed two. You know, well, there you go. One for Jane, one for the little girl. There you go. Okay. Doggos get treats. In this bowl, we've got our roasted walnuts from earlier. These nuts. We're also going to add, so yesterday I did a quick pickle on some shallots. Thankfully, quick pickling is super easy. It's, if you can remember, water, vinegar, sugar in equal amounts. So 1 to 1 to 1 ratio. If you can remember that, that is your baseline map. If you can remember that, you can do a quick pickle. It's that easy. In this case, I used rice vinegar, hot water, and then the sugar, and then mixed it all up till the sugar was dissolved. You're also going to want to add, depending on however much you make, a good solid heavy pinch of salt in order to kind of balance that sweetness. But I loved pickled shallot in with this salad because it just adds a really nice pop to it. And then the other thing we need is some more feta. And the cool thing about doing this quick pickle is because you have that baseline, that super basic brine, you can add whatever you want to it. So if you want to throw in like whole peppercorns, if you want to throw in chili peppers, you certainly can. If you want to throw in herbs, you can too. It's a blank canvas for making a really nice, in this case, pickled shallot. And we're going to add a nice healthy amount to this because they're delicious. And we got a whole bunch of beets. And we got a whole bunch of walnuts. Like I said, I did this one yesterday because, I mean, to be honest, we could have done them like at the very beginning. But I find that with quick pickles like this, 24 hours is a really good sweet spot. And then this stuff we can actually hang on to for something else. Let's do that. Okay. Toss in a little bit of feta here. This is one of the reasons why I didn't want to use red beets for this, is because suddenly the feta would just become this big smear, this big purple smear. Okay. And then lastly, we need to make a quick vinaigrette for this. If you have a vinaigrette recipe that you like, use it. If there's a bottled vinaigrette that you like, use it. I'm just making a quick vinaigrette here to show you how simple it is. When I made, on the cake stream, when I made the pineapple upside down cake and I talked about saving that cherry jar, I'm using that cherry jar right now in order to make the vinaigrette in. So for this is one of the few times where I'm going to be like, yeah, use olive oil, definitely. So I'm not really measuring how much I'm putting in, but I'm going to be looking at the side to adjust how much vinegar that I put in. In this case, I'm feeling a red wine vinegar. And so a lot of times it's recommended that so if we look at that, and that's kind of how much oil that we have in there, it's usually recommended to add about 1/3 of vinegar. I tend to like mine a little bit more acidic, so I usually err on the side of about 2/3 or so. That looks about right. And we'll taste this and adjust as necessary. So I'm going to throw a pinch of salt in here, a little bit of pepper. Pepper goes all over the board, but that's okay. Just a touch of Dijon mustard. The mustard in this case acts as an emulsifier because, as everybody knows, oil and water don't mix. And we literally have oil and water here. Mustard acts as kind of like a peace treaty, if you will, and gets the oil and the water to join hands together in blissful harmony. That's really kind of the best way to put it. Actually, let's put a little bit of garlic in there too. That's about a clove's worth. And see how it has that kind of creamy consistency? That's because of that mustard. When you don't have mustard or mustard powder in there, that's when the vinaigrettes separate and turn into that. Let's taste it. A little bit more salt. And actually, I'm thinking I'm going to want to add just a little bit of sugar. Making vinaigrettes from scratch like this is always just kind of like a balancing act where you're trying to balance like in this case, the bitterness of the oil, the acidity, a little bit of saltiness helps kind of tamp down the acidity and the bitterness a little bit, and the sweetness also kind of helps with that. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm just going to dress this real quick because there's a lot here. Alright, so that is the filling to our salad, which is now nice and mixed up. We got some walnut, we got some beet, all sorts of yummy goodness. Walnut is super nice. Okay. Belgian endive. This is the whole reason why this little salad works for parties. Notice the size. And then once we trim off the end, perfect little cups.
Gifted 2 subscriptions.
Oh, thanks, Lumpy. So, this just gets laid out. And then the leaves of the Belgian endive literally become the utensil. Belgian endive also has a tendency to be a little bit on the pricey side, so this isn't necessarily a everyday kind of thing. We'll just do 8 for the time being. Then it's just
was asking you.
Salad shot.
Is endive usually available at most markets?
Most markets? Not necessarily. I went to one thinking that they would have endive. I ended up having to go to a second market to find it. But like if you go to a slightly more upscale white people market, they should have it if it's in season and they can get it. If not, I would talk to the produce manager and see about getting it. But what's nice about the Belgian endive is it's got a little bit of bitterness to it, but it balances really nicely with the roasted beets and everything else. And it's an awesome little like salad shooter bite. And it makes for a really nice kind of presentation. That one's probably a bit overstuffed, but I'm hungry. You gotta get some of these nuts in there.
I'm thinking we should grow some endive.
Yeah, if it grows well here, absolutely, let's grow some endive. If you can't find endive, I would say you could probably do this pretty well with like butter lettuce, because that's also kind of a cup form. And that's really kind of the whole idea behind this, is that it's something that you can easily pick up and shoot. Let me move that out of the way. Okay. Now, if this is how I could figure out how to set up the little video or channel point redeems, this is where we would have Elle Woods at the very end of Legally Blonde, where she's giving her graduation speech. She's like, "We did it! We're at the end. We have done it. Beaten Belgian endive salad. Let's plate up everything now." Okay. Leave those there. The fromage fort, little crostinis. Okay. Not the greatest of plating, but it works. And just hit that with a little chopped parsley. See, this is why we did all that work earlier. On those, I might put just a couple of green onions, just as a little color accent. Okay. Fromage fort. Done. Let's do that. Okay. There's that platter. Next. Now, we got them mushrooms. You can see how much they shrank. Get the little hangers on off. There we go. Little parsley from a pie. Mushrooms, done. Then, that was another reason why I wanted to let these cool down, is you can much more easily handle the tray. These are smelling real good. Now for these poppers, if you wanted to put some kind of garnish, I would say a little bit of chopped cilantro, which I did not do, but these are just fine as is. And that's jalapeno poppers. That is everything. Let me do that. So we actually have some additional counter space camera. That is everything, folks. That is, woo! That is everything. So now, what do we have left to do? We get to eat. So Mrs. Hueso, if you would, do you want to come in and try this on
Sure.
camera?
No pressure.
No pressure. L'chaim, folks. Thank you. Yeah, I'm also quite hungry myself. We need the chips for the dip. That's the one that I'm most curious about what you think, since Mrs. Hueso is all about the dip. She loves dips.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet? How's that mushroom treating you?
Good. He makes it so he can whole mouth it, and yeah. I can't do that.
Oh, good. Parmesan gets a little crusty.
No.
I think in retrospect, here. In retrospect, I think the Parmesan would have been better inside. And then maybe some additional toasted breadcrumbs on top. That's a fromage fort.
This is excellent. This is really good. I had my doubts. I'm not gonna lie.
That did turn out good.
It just sounded nasty. Mixing weird cheeses. Where's the
That'll
stream?
be right here.
Oh.
There's chat. There's the mod actions. Now. Dip time.
The dip. Thick. My chip broke. I'm gonna make a chip sandwich.
Hey, mine did broke too.
Oh, that's excellent.
Good.
Just thinning it down a little bit.
Salad shooter time.
What is Yeah, total structure failure. Walnut's a nice touch. We've had these before, so. I'm afraid. I'm afraid for the jalapenos are gonna be too spicy.
Well, that being the case, I don't think there's any in here. Wait a minute.
That's okay. This endive's excellent.
The over 30-year-old's best friend, antacids. Here you go.
I'm gonna do
You're gonna do it?
I'm gonna do it.
Are you sure?
Yeah. I need water first though.
Okay. I know myself well enough to know that if I don't do the antacid now, I'm going to be feeling it big time. Okay. Okay, yeah, let's do this one.
What's your guys' favorite party food?
Cheers.
Cheers! The cheese piece is definitely riddled with jalapeno flavor.
Mine's not very hot at all. I told you guys.
Yeah, Pacific Northwest! Woo!
Woo!
Can't have jalapenos
Mm.
hot. No, they're not hot at all. They're good.
They clearly taste like jalapenos because they got that kind of grassy.
See you later, Colleen.
See you, Kelly. But yeah, that one was not spicy at all.
Yeah. We'll have to have you send us some
Yeah.
jalapenos, Mrs. KitchenAid.
I almost think I would have liked them better if they had baked a little bit longer, because the jalapeno is still super crunchy, and I think I would have preferred it just a touch roasted. So maybe par roasting. Oh, thanks, Lumpy.
I was gonna make, just so you know, avocado green is
That's my mom.
Elle's mom. I was gonna make her pay for her own.
Tell.
Thanks, yeah.
Yeah, but I think I would have maybe roasted them a little bit first before filling. But the filling's really good. In fact, I'll go for another one.
They are very good. They're gigantic. That's what she said.
Yeah, where's Grant now? That was good.
Yeah. I love the little cakes. They're adorable.
Yeah. Yeah, the cake turned out really good. I'm very happy with those emotes. So every month here is going to be a different cake. I forget which one's first. I think banana cream. Banana cream cake is the first one because you had to. Hey, Renfield's here.
Just in time for the eating part.
Yep.
That's when people show.
I was just thinking I need another salad shooter.
It's her son. Yay, Renfield. These, this fromage fort, it's really good.
Yeah. And it's going to get better after a few days.
The cheese itself or the cheese on the bread?
The cheese on the bread. That's the fromage fort. No. These we got to eat today.
Oh, okay. That's not
But the actual spread we got to jar up and hang on to for a few days.
Yeah. Food teleporters or drones, of course. I don't know where you're at in the world, Renfield.
Texas.
Oh. We're in Texas. I'm assuming. I heard a rumor you're in Texas, Renfield.
Oh, we have friends in Austin.
Yeah, I go to Austin quite a bit.
She's been a few times. I haven't been there yet. I've been too busy here at the time. So yeah. Any questions from the class today? Now that I can actually like watch chat and we can stand around and eat and enjoy the fruits of my labor.
We're gonna stand around and eat, and you guys are just gonna sit there and salivate. So nice.
What was that Rab that said he needs to eat first before the stream? I think he said that last night. Yes, like I said, Avocado Greed and KitchenAid will post the recipes on the Discord, definitely. Probably also the Facebook group. I personally am trying to wean off of Facebook as much as possible, just because y'all know what it's become.
It's a good question.
Other than a knife. Oh, okay. Out of curiosity, do you have a thought to do requested foods? Yes, actually, Renfield, on the Discord, there is a channel about food recommendations. And so, if there's anything that you're like, hey, what about this? Or what about this? Or what about this? Put it on the Discord. Then that way I have a hard copy of it, because if you just say it in chat, I'm not going to remember it. Although there's a chat bot that I'm looking at, and I was texting with Lumpy Pickle earlier about this, that does voice commands. And apparently has a really good voice recognition software. So then that way I could be like, no, I have my own Discord, Renfield. It's in the socials link that Lumpy just posted. There's a Discord up at the top. Just join that and pop into there. So then that way it's all nice and clean. And we can keep UTA and all that fun stuff that's related to that, and all the trouble we get into on that Discord server, we can keep that there.
All UTA all the time.
All UTA all the time.
That's my philosophy.
So, and then Lumpy asked, what tool other than a knife do I use most often? Probably the board scraper. I think with the knife, I use the board scraper most. Obviously, a cutting board.
Like I said in chat, buy more than one. I'd buy at least 3.
Yeah.
Like in this circumstance, you didn't. Once you cut the jalapeno, then it's contaminated with jalapeno.
Yeah.
And we've learned the hard way of passing capsaicin from one to another. Just gotta leave it at that.
That's an experience that Mrs. Wayso will never let me forget, and I will eternally feel bad.
It wasn't your fault.
Except that it was.
You didn't mean to.
No, it wasn't on purpose. But, yeah, I mean, and when it comes to, like, kitchen knives, I never recommend getting a block. Never get, like, the blocks of knives, just because they're weird sets and you don't know if they're going to work with your hands. Honestly, you're going to accomplish 90+% of any kitchen tasks with a chef's knife. And the one that I recommend to start off with, and it's going to last you a super long time, is this guy. It's by Victorinox. It's a Forstner. It's their 8-inch chef's knife.
It's my training knife.
That's
I was
her training
talking about
knife?
it earlier.
Yeah, because you can get these for 20, maybe
30.
Maybe 30. I don't know. I bought that one for Mrs. Wayso when we first got married, because my knives cost orders of magnitude more.
And you didn't want her to get hurt.
And I didn't want her to get hurt, and B, she didn't have a whole lot of experience cutting things. And so I wanted to get her a knife that she could grow with and would be great to use for a very long time. And we still have it because it's still a fantastic knife.
It's my favorite.
The steel is excellent. In fact, the guy that I take my knives to sharpen, he recommends that brand. And so I'm like, you know what? If this is a professional sharpener and he's recommending it, and I'm like, good, then, I mean, they're kind of standards in most professional kitchens because they don't cost very much and they're fantastic. Ooh, ceramic.
Do you have one?
I do because it was given to me. And when I say given to me, I mean the rep from Kyocera came around to Whole Foods because they're like, ceramic knives are awesome. And I got it for free. If I did this, the blade would shatter. I'm not a huge fan of ceramic knives.
No judgment if you like that.
No judgment if you like them. They have their place. For me, I'm not a fan. Because you have to actually send them to Kyocera to get sharpened. Even though they claim, they never need sharpening. They need sharpening. So I'm not really the biggest of fans of them. But like I said, that's just me personally.
I was trying to think of other kitchen tools that you use.
Regularly?
Yeah.
Well, I use my food processor literally all the time.
He uses that for everything.
Yeah, I use it for a lot of things. Plus, I mean, I make dog food with it. And so it's for me, it's indispensable.
The immersion blender, that would be up there.
Yeah, the immersion blender gets a quite a bit of use. Especially like if I'm making larger amounts of vinaigrette, I'll use it to mix it up. And
I did say immersion blender. I meant the sous vide.
Oh yeah, my sous vide, the immersion circulator, that I use all the time too. In fact, I'll probably end up using it tomorrow for dinner. Still have to figure out what we're going to do for dinner tomorrow because there was a lot of prep that went in today.
Snacks. We're having snacks.
We're having snacks, apparently. So it is written, so it is said, so it is done. Yeah. Yeah, see, exactly, McFace Stab. I mean, it's one of those things that's like you have it, and yeah, I've used it a few times, but that's it. But like the sous vide, like immersion circulator, those things are amazing. It's not a be-all, end-all kitchen tool, but it is one that I use all the time. And it's also fantastic if you're trying to hot hold food, which is exactly what I did when UTA came to my house, is because I had a bunch of things that I needed to keep hot until they got here. And so after things were done, and because I had it set at a specific temp, nothing was ever going to get hotter than it, and I can hold it for a longer period of time. And so yeah, I had the shrimp that I made, that was hot held, the cheese sauce. There were a few things that I hot held that way.
The weed burner.
Oh, the weed burner. Weed burner I use all the time when if I'm making a steak. That's what I use to finish it off. But yeah, Santokus are fantastic. I mean, it's just a knife shape. I have one here. This was shown in collaboration with Kramer Knives. That was put out by Sir Latab. I don't remember how many years ago. But yeah, this is a knife that I use with some frequency too. There's a couple of other knife shapes that, I mean, I love pointy things anyways, and so I've got like a Chinese cleaver here.
Would you, the weed burner? Lovey Pickle's asking about the weed burner.
Weed burner, yes. So, not the kind of weed burner that you're probably thinking. The kind that's actually, it's a large, think like flamethrower that you hook up to a big propane tank, and you go around and you burn the weeds that are like growing in between cement like slabs. It's what I use to finish off steaks. It's what I use to put a final sear on things. Yeah, that's what I do, Renfield, is, and in fact, you honestly ask Grant or Andy or Nick in stream sometime about me using the weed burner, and they'll tell you that I used it to finish off the prime grade chuck roast that I made for them when they came. It's a weed burner that I picked up from Harbor Freight. Wasn't terribly expensive. I picked it up a long time ago, and it's probably pretty close to being time for me to replace it. But yeah, I think it was like $20 or something like that. And I just have it hooked up to one of the big propane cylinders.
Here, I'm going to put a link.
Oh, Mrs. Hueso is dropping a link in the chat. So then that way you could actually see what it is. And it's just a, kind of, we should probably get you like a link shortener.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a flamethrower today. So, yeah. Lots of fun stuff. Hail Hydrate. Yeah, eventually, once I figure out how to do some of the other technical stuff, in terms of like other cameras. Oh yeah, the Tesla flamethrowers. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish I had one. Yes, Tesla made a flamethrower. It was a completely handheld one, but yeah. Once I figure out how to like shoot stuff outside, and we can make that happen, then like I plan on like doing a stream where we do nothing but cook over the fire ring that we have out back. I'll use the weed burner so you guys can see that. Yeah, I know they're not making any more, and yes, exactly. They made it literally for giggles and because they could, but I would have loved one, but that's just me. Yeah, I think that's about it. Unless anybody's got any other questions, if that's the case, then I will roll the outro with the long version of the new jingle, which Renfield I know hasn't heard yet because he only got here just now. Yes, you can. WD-40 works really well. However, I would not use that to finish off a steak because that's a petroleum product, and I don't want burning WD-40 all over my steak. No, I wouldn't do any food grade oil because when they burn, they're still going to give off heavy soot and have a really kind of a nasty taste to them. Burnt oil is never delicious. That's why I like the propane or butane. The only byproduct really is going to be, as crazy as it sounds, if you have a chemistry degree, you understand that really, other than whatever, one of the byproducts of combustion is water. So other than that, there's some other fluorocarbons from propane and stuff. But yeah, clean burn, exactly. So thank you for sticking around today, everybody. Renfield, all the folks that popped in today that have stuck around for a little over 3 hours now. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Had a really good time doing it. We're gonna have a seat and eat, and I'm gonna sit down because I've been standing for over 3 hours now. And yeah, if you ever have any questions about anything, please feel free to hit me up on the Discord or by way of any of the socials, the Facebook group.
And food suggestions? Any
food suggestions, put them up there. Once I figure out the bot thing, I'll have it actually post to things like Discord and Twitter and Instagram and whatever to let people know that I'm going live just in the event. Thank you, Mr. Kingsley and Mr. Truesdell. Thank you so much for being here today. It is super appreciated. And honestly, if it weren't for these two, I wouldn't be doing this now. So thank you kindly. Yeah, hit me up, and chances are I will see you in one of their chats. Enjoy the outro, enjoy the long form of the theme, and yeah, have a good one, folks.
Hello, boys and ghouls. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time. making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. Making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. Making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. Making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK. Making a snack today. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? DK's making a snack today. Shove it right into your mouth. DK's making a snack today. What's it gonna be? Is he making it for me? DK's making a snack today. It's time for tactical snacking with DK.